Forge of Ice.
Yes, sir.
What is Forge of Ice?
Forge of Ice is me, Alex Bates. I make miniatures and write game stuff in Fairbanks, Alaska. I've been doing it since about 2008.
Okay. Why Forge of Ice specifically?
Really, it's just the Alaska thing. I thought, like, well, I'm making metal miniatures, and I'm making them in Alaska, and so it just came to my head. I wish I had a great epic story. It's like, oh, Forge, yeah, like, it works. And I'm happy with it. I think my old college roommate did the logo, and I love it.
So clearly, there's a pulp influence. Do you feel that you have more of a pulp influence than, say, traditional fantasy or other sci-fi gaming? Or
well, if you look at like the original Appendix N from the old D&D, from the earliest D&D books,
right?
Edgar Rice Burroughs was right there at the top of those lists, and Edgar Rice Burroughs are at the top of my list too, as is Robert E. Howard. I have loved the trope of the hidden valley full of cavemen and dinosaurs and ancient ruins and, you know, the degenerate descendants of a once great civilization. Mm-hmm. Ever since I first started reading Tarzan novels when I was a little kid, and of course the Ray Harryhausen movies, and, you know, the Valley of Grongi and the Land of the Lost was a big one for me as a kid. Very much. That's some of my first memories of dinosaurs are from Land of the Lost, and I have never stopped being fascinated by that trope and how late into real-world history people thought it was plausible that you might somewhere be able to find an island or a valley that had some leftover dinosaurs in it.
Right.
And like that was real recently. People thought that was a possibility, and so I've loved that ever since then. And that is what most of my stuff is for. I've got really excited about putting together my own Bronze Age civilization that is inspired by ancient Greece and ancient Egypt and primarily Minoan Crete, which is such an enigma that we can kind of project whatever we want onto it. But also there's a lot of Opar in there. Edgar Rice Burroughs' Opar. There's a lot of Athene and Cathne and gosh, like on the Peloldon and Pellucidar, all Burroughs stuff. Quite a lot of Savage Sword of Conan, especially the John Buscema stuff. Those ingredients are all in there, and this is what I came up with as my People of Azor.
Okay.
And so far, I've written the Fire Pearls of Ayagan, which is an adventure that takes place there. I've written a zine called The Corpse Eaters, which takes place there, which is sold out. I co-wrote a book called Twin Heads of Avarice with my buddy Bill Hancock. He pitched the idea at me, and I was like, that's great. I love the idea of a heist. And I left those at home on my couch, didn't bring them with. I know where the pile is. I also ran a Kickstarter for something called The Eye of the Cyclops, which I am still struggling to finish. That thing is years late, and I have been plugging away at it. And everybody got their miniatures years ago, but there's still about 200 people out there that I owe a $4 PDF to. And I don't know what to say. I've said a lot about it. Nothing I can say that I haven't said before. I'm still working on it. It's important to me. I've got the miniatures.
Coming soon.
Yeah, coming soon. I've been saying that for a while. I'm making progress on it. I've done writing on it as recently as a couple weeks ago. So yeah, that's probably the big thing holding me back right now is just my inability to get that thing done. And you want it to be perfect, but there's no such thing as perfect. And so because it's never perfect, then it's never finished, and then you never have to show the world your imperfect, unfinished thing. And it's just really hard to get that stuff. That's primarily why I started working on other things, like the Corpse Eaters, the Fire Pearls. Like, I need to do something that I can finish and feel good about. And so, yeah, so Eye of the Cyclops is still coming soon. I don't know when. I am not going to commit to a date. But yeah, that's... And then after that, I have more. I have so many more things planned for Azor that I want to do. I have one called The Silent Oracle that I'm working on. I have another one called Death in the Garden of the Serpent Moon that another buddy of mine and I are working on together. I have a lot of ideas just about the gap between having the idea and making it happen is the struggle.
Understood.
Yeah.
So besides Howard and Burroughs, what are some of your other pulp influences specifically?
Oh gosh, I really like Tross of Samothrace. I'm blanking on the author's name right now, but it's a I want to say trilogy. Oh gosh, I'm going to get the details wrong. But it's a sort of historical novels with really, really light fantasy elements. There's oracles who can tell the future and some stuff that might be psychic or might be prophecy. But I really like, the characters all very much live in a world where they believe in the supernatural. Like, everything that happens is attributed to the gods and the spirits or whatever, and it's kind of an open question, and I love that open question. I'm also a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe. I love the artwork of J. Allen St. John. Oh man, what else? H. Rider Haggard. I've read his novel Red Something about the Middle Ages is great. Not just King Solomon's Mines. King Solomon's Mines is great. And of course, the granddaddy of them all is Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World, with Maple Whiteland and the plateau full of dinosaurs and Professor Challenger. I love all that stuff. Kenneth Robeson, the Doc Savage books, although those aren't super relevant to what I'm doing. Boy, Doc Savage certainly encounters any number of islands or valleys that have a lost race or an ancient Egyptian outpost or a valley full of Aztecs with a mountain of gold. So, love all that stuff.
Let me pause this for you for a second.
Let's talk about Azor.
Let's talk about Azor.
So Azor is a Lost World setting in the classic literary version of the trope. It's a hidden valley full of dinosaurs and cavemen and the degenerate descendants of a once great civilization. A friend of mine described it as a Mediterranean smorgasbord, Bronze Age Mediterranean smorgasbord of dinosaurs, and I like that a lot. There's certainly some ancient Greece, some elements of ancient Greece in there, some elements of ancient Egypt, a fair amount of Minoan Crete, and I like Minoan Crete because they have a really interesting style, but also we know so little about them that you kind of project whatever you want onto it. The other biggest influences probably Opar from Edgar Rice Burroughs, the Tarzan novels, the city with the city ruled by ape men and priestesses. A little bit of Pellucidar as well. I have my pterodactyl men, which are absolutely how I pictured Burroughs' Mahars when I was a kid. Burroughs describes the Mahars as rhamphorhynchids, which is like a long toothy beak and a long tail, but I always pictured them as pterodactyl men. And so when I came to make my own Lost Worlds, I was like, well, I gotta throw pterodactyl in. The other important components for Azor is there has to be a theme of decline to it. If you have a city, half the buildings are empty. If there's an inn, half the rooms are empty. If there's a wall, part of it has to be fallen. Everything is in decline, and while certain parts of it are kept up very well, or possibly even growing, overall it is a slowly crumbling, slowly falling, slowly being consumed by the jungle. The other design element that I try to keep in mind for Azor is I try to keep things within 2 notches of reality. I've certainly made exceptions to that for wherever I feel like, because damn it, I created it, I can do that. But the 2 notches of reality thing, the example I'll give is the Azoran Hydra.
Right.
For example, Titanoboas were real. There really were 30-foot long snakes, maybe even 40-foot long snakes. And also in the real world, 2-headed snakes sometimes survive to adulthood, even in the wild. So you don't have to step outside reality to posit that it's possible that at some point there was a 40-foot long 2-headed snake out there in the wild. And if you are a Bronze Age human living in a lost valley and you encounter a 40-foot long 2-headed snake, you're not going to think that's just a polycephalous animal, you're going to think that's a monster. So still, within the realm of reality.
Right.
1 notch away from reality, let's assume that polycephaly, having 2 heads, is an inheritable trait.
Okay.
It's not, at least as far as I know it's not, but let's assume that it is. So what if it's possible that it could be an inheritable trait? So then 1 more notch away from reality would be that if you have a Bronze Age absolute monarch who's willing to throw 10, 20 generations of peasants at the problem, and you start a breeding program, you could eventually breed 40, 45-foot long snakes with 2, 3, 4, 5 heads, and that's how you get hydras in Azor.
Oh, nice.
The result of a multi-100-year-long breeding program, because the king just doesn't go, oh, this hydra ate another peasant, all right, throw some more peasants at the problem. Keep raising them, keep breeding them. Oh, that one has an extra head, even better. And of course, when you're dealing with large animals like that, even in America today with all of our technology, sometimes zoo animals escape, particularly big ones.
Right.
I bet sometimes those 40-foot long snakes with 5 heads escape out into the wild. And if it's an inheritable trait, sometimes they're going to lay eggs. So every once in a while, you're wandering the swamps of Azor, you encounter a hydra. And it's just a 50-foot long snake with 5 heads, but that's a problem. And the other assumption is after 1,000 years of breeding, the heads cooperate-ish. You know, imagine snakes that are pack hunters. That's scary. Is it impossible? I don't know. Is it within 2 notches of reality? I think probably so.
So just to take a step back here, because I think we actually discussed that off camera. In the Azor setting, or Azor, I'm sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing it. So
I don't care. Pronounce it
not really any monsters per se. It's more animal related.
Yeah, I don't generally think of the creatures in Azor as monsters. Some of them are certainly monstrous, but I try to treat the creatures in Azor as wild animals rather than as some. Because monster to me implies there's something supernatural about it. Either there's something supernatural or even unnatural in its origin or its history or its abilities. But for Azor, with one exception, and that'd be my pterodactyl men, because they don't make any sense at all. Anatomically, evolutionarily, like there's no reason something like that should exist. I like them to act more like animals, which to me means if they get hurt, they run away. You know, they don't fight to the death unless they're maybe defending a nest or unless they can't get away. So it's a slightly different angle on wild beasts than you see in like D&D.
Right.
Dinosaurs exist, but I treat them all as they are so rare that each one is the last of its kind. There might be one T-Rex in Azor, and it is a Ray Harryhausen T-Rex with a dragging tail and pebble skin and a tiny brain the size of a walnut. So that's how I treat dinosaurs and animals and monsters in Azor. Now, people call it a monster, certainly, but yeah.
So the Azor setting itself, again, one of the things that we discussed with the people that have been coming by your booth today, doesn't actually have classic role-playing rules, as we would say.
It does not. I write everything that I've written for it so far, and everything I'm planning on writing for the future is system agnostic, which is basically I write it largely in prose. This isn't to say there aren't random charts, or I say like, hey, this person should get a bonus to this type of skill, because I assume that most role-playing games have some way to measure whether you're good at something or not. Whether they call it a skill or a talent or a trait or whatever, there's usually some way to compare whether you're good at something or not, or whether you're bad at something or not, or whether one person is better at a thing than another.
Right.
Some sort of comparable skill. So I describe things in those terms, but most of my text is just prose. As in, like, I would describe, this is a veteran warrior wearing chainmail and carrying a sword, as opposed to saying this is a level 3 guy with 8 hit points and this and that. Because my basic assumption is that regardless of what game you're playing, whether it's D&D, Dungeon Crawl Classic, Call of Cthulhu, whatever, if I tell you a dude has chainmail and a sword, you know what those numbers are, and you as the DM at your table, you know the best way to introduce numbers and randomness into the rule setting at your table, however the rules and the randomness works in your games and with your players and for you and the way you like to run things. So I was really curious how well people would receive it, because the way that I run games, that's fine for me.
Right.
I imagine the sort of people who are really obsessed with the minutia of, battle tech, armor points, and everything has to have a long chart. They might not like what I'm doing, but I've been pretty well received, and the most negative stuff I've heard is that it takes some prep time from a DM. But I don't know, man. When I'm DMing a game, I take some prep time anyways. So
Absolutely.
I'm pleased with it. It makes me happy, and I'm writing it. So
that's really all that matters at the end of the day.
yeah, at the end of it. And I'm certainly capable of writing rules. I have, and I can put stat blocks on there. One long-term project I have in mind is I do eventually want to put together some sort of stat block compilation for all of my stuff, where I say and I probably do D&D or Dungeon Crawl Classics and 5e D&D or whatever the newest edition D&D is. Maybe Shadowed Ark as well, maybe Old School Essentials. Just so the people who do want those numbers, and say, well, here's a PDF, you just get downloaded for free, and here's all the stats for everything in my books. I haven't done that yet. It's not a high priority, but it's on the list. It's on the to-do list. It's a long list.
Fair enough. Before we wrap up here for today, anything else you'd like to say about Forge of Ice or the stuff that you're working on? Or?
Oh, man. Gosh. Put me on the spot. I will never stop making miniatures. I love miniatures. I'm a war gamer at heart. Boy, I played a lot of Warhammer growing up, and a lot of Chronopia. I probably played more Chronopia than Warhammer, and a lot of Mordheim, and a lot of 40K, Rogue Trader, Realm of Chaos, Clan War. Jeez, I bought into Clan War big time. I played a lot of miniatures. Lord of the Rings. I played a lot of miniature games over the years. I love miniatures. I'm never going to get out of them. But I will say that moving forward in the future, I'm probably doing fewer miniatures and more writing. Simply because there's only so much space in my house, and I can only have so many minis and racks. And also, as time goes on, shipping's getting more expensive, molds are getting more expensive, metal's getting more expensive, and maintaining enough stock levels that I can sell stuff, and then tracking stock levels and handling inventory and an online store and shipping rates. I haven't been able to ship overseas since COVID.
Right.
And it hasn't gotten better. I have had nothing but problems with shipping internationally. And it's a bummer because I have some regular customers who are in Canada or England, and they want to order stuff. They still end up wanting to order stuff, and I just can't make it happen. So my miniatures production is mostly moving to Fenris Games in the UK, who's been handling my non-US distribution for a while. And that'll free me up from having to keep stock in my garage, and free up more towards writing, which is something that I have more control over the flow, for better or for worse, and owning up the fact that, boy, sometimes it's hard to write. But at least that way it's all in my hands, and I'm not at the whims of a sculptor or a casting company or FedEx, losing my package and admitting they lose the package and then still refusing to pay the insurance claim anyways. Right. So I think taking things more into my own control is better for me.
Nope, fair enough.
That's kind of what I'm looking towards for the future.
All right. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate all the
Thanks so
information.
much.